Welcome to Making the Cut podcast with Chris Hill and Sean Winter, where we help you succeed in life and business by sharing principles and strategies that guide some of the most successful people in the world.
Welcome to another episode of the Making the Cut podcast. I'm Chris Hill with my co-host, Sean Winter. Today on the show, we have Certified Master Chef Rich Rosendale. But before jumping into that conversation, here's a quick word from our sponsors.
Libby salutes one-of-a-kinds like you, the entrepreneurial chefs who dare to be bold. No matter what vision you're creating, Libby has the full spectrum tableware selection, trend knowledge, and expertise to help you bring it to life. Modern or classic, upscale or casual, urban or rustic, Libby's broad palette helps you create the perfect vibe to match any venue. Get inspired with Libby's breadth of insights-driven solutions at foodservice.libby.com. And with over 120 years teaching experience, Le Cordon Bleu is well established as the global leader in culinary, wine, and hospitality education. Le Cordon Bleu offers a wide range of programs for aspiring professionals to become part of a great tradition of excellence. Earn the credentials that will set you apart from the competition in a demanding and changing industry. Learn more at cordonbleu.edu/USA. And with that, Chris, I connected once with Rich Rosendale, CMC, Certified Master Chef Rich Rosendale, back for Entrepreneurial Chef. We did a feature on him. So I'm very interested to see what has happened since then. He's got a great story, great background. He's done a lot of things, competed at a high level. I'm very, very excited to be able to connect with him again.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm excited. Rich competed in the Bocuse store at a young age. He's done some great things. I know he'll have some awesome insights. So with that, let's just go ahead and hop in. Hey there, Chef Rich Rosendale. How's it going today?
It's going great, Chris.
Chef, maybe you can give the audience a bit of a background, kind of where you came from, what you've been up to, and what you're up to now.
Well, it's hard to kind of put this into an elevator pitch because I've done so much over the years. But I started off like a lot of kids early on in my career in southwestern Pennsylvania. Really wasn't a great student. Got into a lot of trouble, was a real handful for my mom. But once I started cooking, it just launched me into this just whirlwind and has changed my life. I mean, it's taken me, being an entrepreneur and traveling around the world, cooking for dignitaries. But it all started with a simple home ec class in southwestern Pennsylvania. And today, where I'm talking to you from, is in Northern Virginia. I live in Loudoun County and moved here a few years after I had left the Greenbrier, where I was the executive chef and director in food and beverage. And I have two companies right now that I oversee. One of them is Roots 657. That's our restaurant division. And then I have Rosendale Collective, which is our events and cooking classes.
So, Chef, I'm curious, when you were starting out in your career, what was the original or initial plan you had for yourself?
Well, that's a good question, Sean. I think a lot of people just assume that you have it all mapped out. And, in the early part of my career, young Rich Rosendale was very organized, very disciplined, super methodical. And rather than thinking about what the next step was, I was always thinking about what the next series of steps were going to be. As I got older in my career, a little further down the runway, I began to be a little bit more nimble. And certainly in the opening of Roots, rather than having this really rigid picture of what that business was going to look like and what it was going to be, over the years, I've gotten to be a little bit more nimble and kind of organic in the whole approach. But it's always been continuing to keep the momentum and continue to set new goals. I think that's really important. When I was at the Greenbrier, I oversaw the apprenticeship program there. And one of the hardest things for apprentices was that at the end of this 3 years was that you were now done with this goal that you've been working toward for 3 years. And people didn't realize that in order to keep the momentum, you've got to set another finish line. It's really important in your mind's eye to have a series of goals. Otherwise, people get stuck and stagnant. And you just got to keep it rolling. And that's what I've continued to do.
Yeah, Rich, I watched the documentary, The Contender, and for anyone that hasn't watched that yet, that has any interest in all in culinary, and especially the Bocuse store, is really a fascinating interview. It gets a lot into the insights and the mindset that it takes to compete at such a high level like that. One of the folks they interviewed was, I believe, maybe the former director of food and beverage at the Greenbrier, and he talked about how you had this kind of insatiable appetite to learn and grow, and how when you came to the Greenbrier, you'd already done culinary school, you'd already had an apprenticeship somewhere else, and then you were willing to get more apprenticeship experience with them. What was that decision like?
Well, I think that it's really even true today, where I've continued I still want to learn. I'm still always hungry for knowledge. But when I was in Uniontown, Pennsylvania, where I had done my first apprenticeship at Nemacolin Woodlands Resort, my other peers, other chefs that were at school with me, they thought I was out of my mind. They were like, "Rosendale, you just finished 3 years of apprenticeship. What the hell are you going to go and do another 3-year apprenticeship?" But I was very driven and very determined, and I had a picture in my mind about what I needed to do, and I just wasn't. I didn't feel confident that was enough. Yes, I could have went and been an executive chef somewhere, I'm sure, but it wasn't at the level of knowledge and the skills that I felt that I still needed to develop. I mean, I was looking at it on a completely different level, and I knew that going to the Greenbrier was going to be more of a finishing school after going into the first 3-year apprenticeship.
Now, I'm curious, was that one of the pivotal moments or decisions in your life that put you on this trajectory today? Or was there another pivotal moment or decision that you made early on that has now contributed to the success that you've achieved?
Well, I think that continuing to be surrounded with really amazing people, I always try to I don't care if they're a chef or not a chef. I mean, it doesn't really matter, but I just try to surround myself with people that are the very best at what they do. And even at the Greenbrier, I was surrounded with people like that. I mean, there could be somebody that maybe we don't know all of their names because they're not on Twitter or they don't have a TV show, but there's people that were just amazing butchers or amazing sauciers. I mean, people don't really grow up anymore and aspire to be just a solid saucier at the Greenbrier, but it is something that I learned from people that were leaders and teachers, and they continue to keep that trajectory. And I didn't even realize it at the time. I was just continuing to learn from these just amazing people. So I always just try to put myself in those situations that I was going to just grow. And I still do that today.
For you, Rich, looking at kind of this maybe earlier part of your career, are there any setbacks or challenges that you had to go through that you're now, a better chef and person as a result?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think people always just assume that everything you touch turns to gold, and it's not really the case. Whenever we set out to do the movie The Contender, I mean, obviously the goal was going to Lyon and winning the competition. And in the beginning of that process, that's what my vision was. And I imagined we're going to go there, we're going to compete, we're going to build this kitchen inside of a nuclear fallout shelter at the Greenbrier. I mean, it was like warp speed. Hold on, everybody. That's what it was like when I went back to the Greenbrier and got selected as the candidate. But anybody that watches the movie will see that, it didn't go the way that we had planned. We didn't end up winning the competition as we thought that how the story was going to play out. But when we got back from Lyon, France, the director had contacted me. He's like, "Well, wow, what do you think? The movie didn't end the way that we thought." And I was like, "Josh, honestly, this is even more of a reason to share this story with people, because that's really what life is like. it doesn't always end up the way that you think it is going to. And I think that this can inspire people even more so than how you would expect the movie to end. I mean, I think that's, I kind of love the saying from Mike Tyson, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. And I've gotten punched in the face over my life just like anybody else. And what really defines you is how you bounce back from that. It's easy to be a leader or to be successful when everything is going. The people that inspire me, that keep that up, regardless of what the circumstances or the conditions are around them.
And I'm curious if you can place yourself back into that period of time, just to dive a little bit further into it mentally. What was that process like that you had to go through when the expectation didn't turn into reality? It turned into something else. I'm sure there maybe was a little frustration or anger, but perhaps not. But I'm curious, your mental state, what was that transition period like, and how did you pull yourself through that?
Well, it's like anything else. The adversity at the time is a little painful, and it stings when things don't go your way. But truly, that is what shapes who you are. And though I didn't realize it, even though we didn't end up winning, the Bocuse d'Or has impacted my life in profound ways. I mean, it's such a pivotal moment, I would say, as we point to different significant events in your career. It's definitely one that has had a lasting impact on me. I mean, I've remained as a coach on the team. I have these great relationships with some of, the world's just best chefs. And I still have been able to be part of an initiative to win the Bocuse d'Or in the United States. And it's just something that I can point to and be proud of, and to say, hey, I'm also content that I was part of the process. And you don't always have to be the one that gets it across the finish line. Sometimes we can all cross it together. And I think that's really probably more important. It's not, the Bocuse d'Or isn't about one person. It's about, you're really representing the masses, the country, and it's a responsibility. And, it's something that I'm really proud that I've been part of it. From a business standpoint, people are always asking me, like, man, how the hell do you have all these different things going on? Well, part of that ripple effect of being in competitions has been this just relentless execution and attention to details and dealing with what happens when things don't go as planned. That's what business is like. So competition really does have so many parallels to the business world.
I love what you said about together everybody would cross the finish line. There's a quote, and I forget who said it, or if it was like a proverb or something, but it said something like, if you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go together. And I think it speaks volumes to what you had said.
Absolutely.
In the documentary, in reference to kind of what you were just mentioning, you said something along the lines of, don't worry about the stuff you have no control over, but you definitely want to make sure that you can control everything that you have influence over. And it's amazing. I mean, like you said, you all set up like this mini kitchen in the Greenbrier. You go over there, 3 months before to try out the ingredients, because obviously, butter is different over there than it is over here. I mean, the attention to detail is incredible. People think about the idea of like having your mise en place set up, but like this is like that, like on complete steroids.
Yeah, it definitely is. And people wonder if my home kitchen is like that. And it's, hey, things get messy sometimes. I'm just like, people wonder about me at home, and I'm a normal guy. There are doses of that intense organization when you spend time with me. But, I've got 3 kids. My car gets messy. I clean it up, whatever. I mean, it's just, it's like, I think that experiencing a competition and cooking at that level it gives one the ability to raise the bar or to raise your execution or the quality. You can go there if you have to be there. But if you've never had training at that high of a level and you ask that of somebody, it's difficult. They're not really sure how to get there. But I've learned over the years, if I'm doing I had 130 7th and 8th graders at Roots a couple of weeks ago, and we were doing a bread baking practical. I had to kind of be content that it was going to get a little messy, but that's okay. It's just, I have that ability that I can go to that level when I need to, but I can also be really nimble, and help bring other people's abilities up to a higher level, just from that training I received.
Very cool. You had mentioned a parallel to business, and I'm curious, you have made a successful transition from being a chef that works for someone or a company to being more of a chef entrepreneur. I'm curious what that initial transition was like for you.
Great question. Well, I think probably the hardest thing is kind of making that leap. And people, I think, I know whenever I left the Greenbrier, everybody was like, are you out of your mind? You're at what many would consider to be like the pinnacle of one's career. And I walk in one day and put my notice in. They thought I was out of my mind. But that on one hand, people think, well, yeah, that's easy for you to do because you're Rich Rosendale. You have a name and you're going to be just fine. And it's like, well, actually, to look at it from the other side of the coin, I would say, well, you've got a lot to lose. And it's just like taking the CMC exam. A lot of people would be like, well, why doesn't everybody take the CMC exam? Well, there is an ego. There is a component where you're like, man, do I really want to take the chance at failing? And business is like that. And I guess you've got to be okay with failing and knowing that is an option. But in the end, you're going to be okay. You just got to muster up that courage and know that it's okay to be a little scared. But I did leave the Greenbrier, and I started the first thing I started doing was the television show with CBS. We filmed about 50 or 60 episodes of Recipe Rehab, and it was an amazing. It's been an amazing ride. It remains an amazing ride. But yeah, I didn't really know exactly what success was going to look like. I just knew that I was going to be successful.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like you took the CMC exam to help prepare yourself for the Bocuse d'Or. Almost, it was a way to put yourself in this uncomfortable situation where you had to put in the time and the effort. Is that the case?
Yeah, and I think that if you look at the timeline with me, most people, if you look at my resume, you're like, man, how in the world did you even fit all this stuff in? And I got 3 kids, and my wife, we've been together since 7th grade. So I've just always continued to kind of keep the momentum. And when I went back to the Greenbrier, we had opened up like 7 new restaurants. We launched a 44-acre farm, the casino. And literally like 3 months after we had opened up the casino and did the first PGA Tour, I was like, hey, put me on the list. I'm going to come up and take the CMC exam. But where people misinterpret that kind of trajectory, it isn't that I just decided 3 months before the exam that I was going to take it. In reality, I had been steering toward that level of craftsmanship my whole career. It was just basically saying, hey, I'm going to actually go up and take the exam this year. And I did do it right before Bocuse d'Or because I looked at it as, hey, this is the world I need to be in right now. Cooking at this level, it's only going to help me with the Bocuse d'Or. I think sometimes people put things off too much, and when you do that, you really kind of never really get around to it.
And with all that you have mentioned, this timeline, the things that you have had in the past and have going on, I'm curious, when you look up to this point, what has been some of those the greatest moment of success that you've experienced?
Man, the greatest moment. Well, I think that one of the things that makes me feel really good is seeing other people that have worked with me go out and do really well. Corey Siegel, who went out, left the Greenbrier and has been successful. Danny Sterling, who was just working with me as a sous chef with Rosendale Collective, he just launched his business. He's actually newly married as well. But I think seeing a lot of other people do really well, it makes me feel really good. And also, I think having the balance to be able to have 3 wonderful children and my wife, I guess being able to manage it all, it's difficult, but it makes me feel really good whenever you see the kind of collateral impact on other people's lives. Makes me feel really good. But I wouldn't say there's any one, like, doing the Bocuse store or the Olympics or anything like that. They're all just part of this really awesome story, and I'm still telling it today.
I love that. And on that last point with the kids, I'm about to have number 2. So I just need one tip. How do you make it work from an entrepreneurial standpoint with kids?
Oh, that's a good. Well, I'll tell you, opening up Roots has been great because it's something that the kids can come in and enjoy. And one other little thing I would tell you, I don't know if it works for all kids, but Francesca, when she was really young and she would be crying, if I was in the kitchen and I was by myself, if Laura was out picking up the other kids, I would go into cooking demonstration mode and I would begin to tell her, like I was doing a cooking show, I would explain to her what I was doing. And I don't know if she was just like, just confused with what I was doing or whatever, but she would always stop crying and she would always pay attention. But I don't care if I was making pancakes or sous vide steak. I would always go into demo mode and she loved it. So try it out. I don't know.
Demos at the Winners tonight.
There you go.
I want to see a video recording of that, Sean.
Yeah, I'll do a Snapchat.
So, Rich, in relation to your family, it's really cool that you and your wife have been together since 7th grade. A lot of folks, including myself, have been in this industry and had challenges with relationships, making those important relationships. Maybe it's kids, maybe it's your wife. Important and successful. How have you guys been able to handle that? Are there any tips or ideas you have for folks listening?
Well, it would not be realistic for me to, it wouldn't be accurate for me to take credit for that. My wife, I think surrounding yourself with people that understand, that they know what they're getting themselves into, really helps. And then also, trying to sacrifice, you're already asking of them so much that whenever there is time together, there's going to be time together, because sometimes we work these really crazy hours, and then on your only day off, you go to the hockey game or you are working on one of your hobbies. And I think you got to try to, you've got to be disciplined as well to make the family an important aspect of your daily life.
Love that. So true. So true. Now, you had mentioned Roots a minute ago, and I believe you have an expansion of Roots that's coming. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, but also from an entrepreneurial standpoint, what made it the time to then kind of expand at this point?
Well, Roots is something that, I do feel really good about doing that project. And again, that's another thing that you don't know if it's going to be embraced by the public, but it has been since we've been open. And it's also kind of something that I would almost think of as almost more, whereas Rosendale Collective is purely about this type of business model. Roots is not. Roots is kind of more using my reach and my commitment to quality, but using that as kind of a meeting place where the entire community can kind of point to and be proud of and be involved in. So we sell stuff on commission from like local vendors and local artisans. We have all local craft beer on tap, local wines. Our burgers are Rosendale Farms, grass-fed, all natural, local. So it is kind of like conscious capitalism, I think, where it's not always about the numbers. It's about the numbers, but it's also like, how can we do something that everybody it's a win-win-win-win. And to me, like, it's great as an entrepreneur to figure out how to do that and see that it actually can be done. Like, you can do something that is a profitable business model, but it also has this impact on the community. I mean, it's wonderful to see people that maybe are local bakers or a local somebody that does beer and they're passionate about it, and to talk to and see how Roots has kind of changed their business. And it's like, man, that's a really great feeling. And also, my background over the years has been mostly fine dining. And now to be able to have something that it's like, look, you don't have to wait until your birthday to come here. You can come here 3 times a week, or everybody feels like it's accessible. I have a lot of people that live far away, but they'll go like, I want to come out to Roots and experience it. And I don't feel intimidated. I don't have to wear a tux or make a special reservation. It's like, it's for everybody. And that's a wonderful feeling when you have something like that. And I think sometimes you have an idea about when growth is going to occur. I think for businesses, it's better to not be overly ambitious in the beginning. The market will tell you, the business will tell you when it's time to grow. And for us, Sean, as you asked, like, how did we know? It's like, well, we're running out of cooler space. We're running out of storage space. We don't have enough seats. On a Sunday, we could do like 1,000 people a day. If you don't have any more parking spaces, it's like, well, we need to add more parking spaces. So I think that is a better approach to, nobody ever closes because the restaurant was too small. You can always expand when it is time to expand, but to open up this massive building and expect that the business is going to come, it may not come. So we just use the business to indicate that it was time to grow.
In relation to that and business growth, I'm curious to know kind of what your business decision-making process is like, and even maybe how, in the earlier days, I know at the Bocuse store, one of the challenges of the USA is that we're kind of this melting pot. We're not really known for any kind of one certain thing. So kind of finding your voice and kind of finding your unique point of view and then bringing that to the marketplace, whether it's in a competition, but then also for a business. I'm curious to kind of know how you make those decisions.
Well, I will reference, one thing I like to do in my free time is I'm a big rule breaker stock fan. I listen to like Motley Fool, which is like they're based here in Northern Virginia, but I love a lot of the companies that are kind of like rule breakers. And like, to me, I'm not worried about like, hey, you're supposed to follow this path. I like to create my own path. And as some chefs may say, well, my specialty is Italian, or I specialize in this. Like, I don't want to draw a line in the sandbox and say, I just got to play over here. I really want to just enjoy the ride, and my life and business is part of that. And though Collective and Roots are maybe serving different audiences, there is some cross-pollination there. And I also think that as a chef, you got to think about investing. And you like, for me, Roots is kind of diversifying my investments as well. It's like I'm doing something that's going to benefit the community. I'm not putting all my beans in one basket and trying to say, well, we're going to just do classes, we're going to just do this. It makes a more robust business model. And I think these days, I think that you can go out and find your audience. I mean, you can go on Facebook and do an ad, and it can go in right in front of the people that are your audience for this. So to me, as long as I feel like I'm qualified to do it, I'm open to lots of different things. And as a master chef, I'm not a master chef in Italian food. I'm not a master chef in South American cuisine. I'm a master chef. When I had to take the exam, I was tested on all aspects of cooking, classical cooking and global. And food from India, baking and pastries and healthy cooking. And, I kind of like that. I mean, I like the fact that you can throw a whole pig in front of me and I'll cook it. Or if you want me to do a carrot garnish for the Bocuse d'Or that'll just blow your mind, I can do that too. I love that.
Yeah, and I love how it's not super niche, it's kind of contradictory to what some people think that they have to do. And I think there's a time and a place sometimes when you're trying to stand out, and going super niche and landing and expanding works, and, or at your level now, just a little bit of everything. I love it. Now, last question for me. What are some of the things that you have on the horizon now? Because I see the ads for the webinar, or no, I'm sorry, not webinars, but the workshops, the classes and things. So what else do you have kind of on the horizon up and coming?
That's a great question, Sean. One of the things that we are excited about doing is I get a lot of people that ask me about the classes that maybe it's out of their budget or it's too far or, what have you. And for us, frankly, it is expensive to do these. I mean, it's kind of like a Metallica concert. I mean, we're shipping stuff out to all these different venues all over the country and outside of the United States. So one of the things we're going to be doing is changing the format of the classes. We are going to be rolling out a new online platform that'll be subscription based. It'll be a lower price point, but still like premium training. And that is going to be really exciting. We're going to be launching that in July. And what I'm excited about is that we'll be able to open up our training, our world-class training, to people anywhere in the world that want to attend it. And we still will do some classes, but they're going to be more one-off classes, like we just did one with Jan Bernard Lejard on plating, which was just extraordinary, over the top. I think that's the one that you saw, the floating potato tree, which was super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we're excited about that stuff. And one of the things where Roots and Collective kind of meet, and I mentioned the cross-pollination. So we are building at Roots a live fire theater so that when we do a barbecue class there, we're going to have a home base to be able to do that class. And it's really cool to see in the audience at one of the classes, you can have somebody that was a customer at Roots sitting next to a Michelin star chef. And you know what? They both are there. The only thing they really have in common is that they like food and they want to learn how to maybe cook brisket or something like that. And that's really cool. And it just kind of shows how there could be some crossover in ways that you had not expected.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm a big fan, Rich. And, one kind of in wrapping up for me, as the contender, the documentary is kind of coming to a close, there's a quote from you where you say, the medals represent something you're going through. For me, the real treasure is what I get out of it, the experience I get out of it. I'm still training. I don't always know what I'm training for. Sometimes it's just to be better tomorrow than I am today. I think that's great advice for anyone listening. Any other kind of final thoughts for the listeners?
No, thank you for sharing that, Chris. I appreciate that. No, I would just say that, it's really important to find what it is that inspires you. You don't always have to know what success is. You'll know when you find it. but it's so important to make sure that you're enjoying the ride. And I've enjoyed the ride, and I got to tell you, I'm really, really glad to be able to do the show with you guys. I'm a big fan as well. I've listened to pretty much all the episodes, and happy to be here with you today. So thank you very much.
So that was our conversation with Rich Rosendale. Sean, that was a lot of fun. What were your takeaways?
So there's definitely a lot in there. I think number one, it was neat to hear that he didn't know exactly how things were going to unfold at the beginning of his career. When you look at him today, I think he alluded to this in his answer to the question. When you look at him today, people may think that everything was mapped out and just one step after the next in succession, he had this just absolute strategy, and it just wasn't that way. So it was refreshing to hear that he just set out on some type of journey, not knowing exactly what it was going to be, and held himself to a very high standard, just continued to learn things and put one foot in front of another and executed. So that was really neat. And the other thing, when he was transitioning from working for someone as a chef to then becoming more of an entrepreneur, how he stepped out essentially with blind faith. He didn't know how it was going to unfold. He just knew he was going to be successful. And I think that having that confidence that you're going to make it and stepping out with that confidence can guide you, as opposed to having the fear that you're going to fail and that things aren't going to work out. So I thought that was really neat what he talked about in those two areas. What about you?
For sure, man. Very, very cool stuff. I the first thing for me is I liked when he was talking about, how he wasn't looking for the next step, but the next kind of series of steps. So maybe he didn't have everything mapped out. He didn't have an exact plan, but he had an idea of where he wanted to be in a couple of years. And I think a lot of times people who don't have that understanding of where they want to go can kind of feel and get lost. And also for me, I think when he was talking about towards the end here with his businesses, how he didn't want to have all of his eggs in one basket, how having the Rosendale Collective, having Roots, it was a way to kind of, as he alluded to, diversify his portfolio. Kind of a similar way to Dory Clark mentioned in a previous episode of being entrepreneurial you, having these different sets of streams of income that allow you to keep doing the good work that you love doing. So love that conversation. Rich is a great guy. And definitely check out the documentary, The Contender, which documents his journey to the Bocuse store. And what's interesting, too, is they're filming along the way, so they don't know how it's going to turn out. Goosebumps throughout. It was a great watch, and I encourage you to check it out for sure. And with that, we'll leave you with one final quote from Rich, which we mentioned in one of the questions, but it's just really profound, which is, "The medals represent something you've gone through. For me, the real treasure is what I get out of it, the experience I get out of it. I'm still training. I don't know what I'm training for exactly all the time. Sometimes it's just to be a better person tomorrow than I am today." And with that, we're signing off.